Okay, class. So we're going to get started in looking at the cultures and their social complexity as they go chronologically. And the reason I'm starting, you'll see as early as I am, is that we see hallmarks late of the later cultures strongly representative very early times. So I want to point those out. What I would say is, as always, I'm not really going to hold you to memorizing years or anything like that, but I would ask you to have things in the correct chronological sequence, so that I would hope you could kind of retain. Anyway, let's get into it. So you have, got the cotton pre-ceramic, 3000, 1800 BC, coastal villages. This is not what I would call necessarily state level complexity, but very, very near to it. So maritime economies, that's sea-based, fishing, etc. Emphasis on some domesticates, cotton, gourds, chili peppers. Mummification, which we'll see a lot of in these different cultures, is present at this very early time. The early mummies are called the chinchorro mummies, and you may remember them if you took my intro to archaeology class. We talked a little bit about them. So with that mummification process, what they're doing is removing the internal organs, putting like kind of stuffing the body. And what's really kind of aiding the preservation is very often that these mummies are kept at some sort of altitude. And in any environment that has, less oxygen, there's going to be less bacteria that would break the body down. They were sometimes painted with red ochre or manganese, which is a black kind of color when it's used as a paint. And we also see monumental architecture really early, and that's really impressive. As we move forward in time, the sites, the early site is really kind of famous, El Corral. You see it has these sunken courts and that kind of large monumental structure. It's really impressive for being this early. Think about what the Olmec were doing compared to this, for example. El Paraiso, these kind of square ritual structures that are paired with storage facilities. We'll see that as we go forward as well. The initial period, we get the widespread adoption of pottery and weaving, quinoa, potatoes, cottons, gourds, corn, intensive agriculture, irrigation. We're getting into state level stuff here, right? And then you start to see not just, things that were invented, or not things that were just domesticated in Mesoamerica and filtered down, but now you're seeing South America Andean specific domesticates, quinoa, potatoes, llamas and alpacas. And of course the guinea pig. Look at them, they're so cute. So their food, if you ever are down there, you can get guinea pig on the menu. They serve it different ways. Apparently, I've seen pictures of this deep fried guinea pig. They just stick the whole little dude down in there. He's kind of like on your plate. Anyway, I just love to think of herds of guinea pigs on the Altiplano, being cats reeling them in and stuff. But it's not the way it was done. But anyway, guinea pigs. Coming forward, so getting more specific into this period, we can talk about the pre-Chavin times, or we're still definitely pre-Chavin here. You have inland monumental centers developing, and a lot of this is just a less colorful version of the preceding slide. But I key on the architectural monuments and new architectural styles. When we get into Chavin, you'll really see what that's looking like. So the two pre-Chavin sites we're going to talk about are Sechin Alto, which you see there, and then Cerro Sechin. So Sechin Alto, massively huge U-shaped monumental complex with sunken courts and sunken temples. with kind of a line along a central axis, so it's sort of linear in its layout. And you can see, you know, this thing's big. Cerro Sechin, you see here, it has these kind of almost stela-like monuments across its front wall. It's been argued that there's a duality present here, which might be evidence for moieties. If you took Anthropology 103 with me, the Intro to Cultural, or maybe if you didn't, you might remember that, whoa, sorry about that. You might remember that unilineal kinship can sort of lead to these bigger kin groups developing. So a lineage would be a bunch of people with a common ancestor. A clan would be a bunch of people who claim a common ancestor and can't prove it. Sometimes you get phratries, which are groups of clans kind of glomming together. And sometimes the phratries will glom together and you get moieties. Well, moieties, if they're present in a unilineal system, cut the culture neatly in half. Half the people are in moiety 1 and the other people are in moiety 2. So if a culture does have moieties, there are only ever 2 of them. There's never 3, there's never 7, there's never just 1. It always splits the culture in half. You can think of the sun people and the moon people, or, you know, the guinea pig people and the alpaca people, whatever the, you know, overarching logic would be is kind of immaterial to the fact that the society, due to unilineal bonds, is separated in half. So you see here, the iconography shows a lot of evidence for conflict. What do you mean, Professor? Let's look closely at some of these figures. You can see this fella has been sliced in half, for example. Blood, this guy's been flayed open and there's blood pouring out, and this is all kinds of messed up. And, you know, they appear to be warriors. You know, this guy's holding some sort of club. So these are like statements of dominance. If you've ever looked at the site of Monte Alban in Oaxaca, Mexico, they kind of have similar monuments at Monte Alban with these kinds of figures who've been kind of sacrificed and mutilated, who were, you know, vanquished enemies. Even at this early time, we see evidence, and I'll show you what that looks like, that the people are inhaling what's called vilca, which is a hallucinogenic snuff. If you remember, again, if you took Intro to Cultural with me, we talked about the Yanomamo in the Amazon using yopo. Well, yopo and vilca are the same things. So the Yanomamo call it yopo, and the people in the Andean region call the material vilca. It seems at a really early time it got made a regular part of religious practice, at least among religious specialists, in sort of in its ability to, you know, cause hallucinations that were given religious reasoning or explanation. So we find things like this. So there you see in the lower right the plant with the seeds. You roast those seeds and then you can crush them, or well, I'll show you what else you can do. But these bone tubes to snort the stuff. And then these kind of snuff trays, think of them as like a mirror, the dollar bill and the mirror, to use a cocaine analogy. And we find these early in the Andean region. And then things that look like they were drawn or carved or painted by people on hallucinogens, right? Very cool stuff. All right, that's it for this video. I will see you in the next one.